Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I'm going to be going over some Paladin builds for the rework next week in 10.0.7. I'm going to be going over a single target build and an AoE build, like pure AoE. For this, it's important to note that there are no firm simulations, at least public ones that I know of, and so this is theory crafting. I could be wrong on some things, but this does give you kind of a template you can follow if you want to on Tuesday. Now this is barring any more tuning. There was a patch notes put out that did not have any increased tuning on the spec at all, so we'll see. We still have 5 days until Tuesday. There could be more tuning. I will say one thing off the bat before we get started: the ability Templar Strikes, I do believe, and I'm not calling for it, I'm not hoping for it necessarily. I mean, I kind of am because I don't like it, but I'm not calling for it. I'm saying that Templar Strikes, it's very possible that ability's damage gets nerfed before Tuesday. Why? Because, well, we'll really talk about that when we get to the AoE build. It is just much too strong, essentially. It's very, very, very strong. But we are going to start with a single target build. We'll talk about the Paladin side, and then we'll talk about the Ret side. And for this build, there's at least one point that you can kind of play with, and we'll talk about that as well. So on the Paladin side, it's important to know, obviously, for utility, you can choose whatever you want. So there are damage nodes on the Paladin side. We have Greater Judgment. We have Justification. We have Avenging Wrath. We have Holy Aegis, which gives crit. We have Crusader's Reprieve. And those are your damage abilities at the top. And now we have, of course, our big power damage abilities at the bottom. Underneath my camera is Seal of Order. This is the same talent that you will have selected on live. We have this selected here as well. Dusk of Dawn's been redone, and so that is selected as well above it. I mentioned those two specifically because they could be behind my camera. Seal of Order, you can see it right there. And then of Dusk and Dawn selected. We have Seal of Might, Divine Toll into Divine Resonance for single target, Seal of Alacrity, Seal of Crusader, and Vengeful Wrath. This is more useful for execute phase and stuff like that, which doesn't even really get fully used in testing unless you're literally testing on like a raid boss. But like hitting a target dummy, it's not that useful unless, of course, the target dummy is almost dead. But then, of course, the entire thing's an execute phase, so you would test, a full health target dummy and an execute target dummy and see the difference, I guess, for proper testing. But again, that's a lot of work for one person to do. But maybe somebody's out there doing it. More power to them if they are. So it's kind of the single target build. Basically, we're just leaving out Divine Purpose. Divine Purpose got nerfed very heavily. It was never the greatest for single target, and with the heavy nerf, it's likely not that great here either. I will say on the Ret side, we will be playing Vanguard of Justice, even the nerfed version, and Divine Purpose can work well with that. But with the only 10% chance, we're just going to skip it for this one at least. As we move over to the Ret side, things become a bit more interesting. So we're actually going to be playing with Vanguard of Justice here. Why? Because in my testing, this talent itself, having it increases your damage by quite a bit. And then it also pairs well with Templar Strikes, which we just talked about, which is very powerful. Now without Vanguard of Justice, Templar Strikes is only a little bit more powerful than Crusading Strikes for single target. But with Vanguard of Justice, it's quite a bit noticeable, more power level. So we're going to be basing our build around this because this changes the way we play. So now our Holy Power abilities will cost 4 Holy Power, but they'll do more damage, right? So our build's going to be based around that essentially. Come up at the top, obviously we have the choices we have to take. At the first choice node on the left, we're going to reduce the cooldown of Blade of Justice by 2 seconds. Yeah, I think that's... It's a because you can also cool down of Judgment, but Crusader Strike we obviously don't need because we have Templar Strikes. Expurg, just basically bleed damage, but it's fire. We're gonna skip Judgment of Justice. It's not that powerful for damage, and it's more of a PvP talent. We're gonna grab Holy Blade, mostly because that's just kind of it's nice just to have the 2 power spender when you're playing the Vanguard of Justice with 4 power. It's actually quite nice to have that. Art of War for the resets. Over here, just Guided Prayer, that's your choice on that. That's not a damage ability. We're going to take Final Verdict as our spender for single target. Jurisdiction is going to increase our range of stuff and our damage by Blade and Final Verdict. We're going to skip over this node with Inquisitor's Ire and Tempested Lightbringer. Inquisitor's Ire is a single target ability, but without Empyrean Power, which we are not selecting here, it's not really useful for single target. Shield of Vengeance, obviously. We're going to take Vanguard's Momentum. Again, more of an execute talent, just like Vengeful Wrath is down here. But we're still going to take it, again, nonetheless, for single target. We're going to skip over Zealot's Fervor for now, at least. This is an optional talent. We'll talk about that at the end. We're going to skip over that for now. We're going to take Rush of Light. 5% haste is very, very nice. So we're going to go ahead and grab Rush of Light. We're going to take everything in the next row, but these are choice nodes. Judgment generates 1 additional holy power, so it's 2 holy power. So our Blade and our Judgment are generating 2 holy power, which is very pertinent since our spenders are 4 holy power. 2 goes into 4. Kind of works out nicely, right? Templar Strikes is up next. Again, this is a 2-part combo. So again, 2 goes into 4. Works out very nicely. It's essentially the only ability that you'll be using that does not generate 2 is your Hammer of Wrath. We're going to grab Divine Wrath. This is kind of an optional talent as well, but it's kind of hard to find a better one there. 3 seconds more on your Avenging Wrath. Here we're going to grab Consecrated Blade, basically just more passive damage. Again, this isn't a high-powered talent, but again, it's just, you start to run out of options pretty quickly once you get all the main ones for a Vanguard of Justice build. Here we're going to have Empyrean Legacy. This is a very strong single target talent. This was down at the bottom on 10.0.5. And it gives basically just a free Divine Storm into your target every 20 seconds. Pretty nice. On the next row, we're going to obviously take Vanguard of Justice, what the build is built around. We're going to do Heart of the Crusader, which buffs up our Templar Strikes. We're going to put 1 point into High Lord's Judgment, just so we can have more than 1 debuff on our enemy target. We're going to grab Avenging Wrath for the 1 minute cooldown. Crusade isn't bad by any means. I really want to see the sims of this, because this is one of those things that's just too hard to test these enough, especially because you can't change the talents while it's on cooldown, right? So this is hard to test yourself like multiple times, like many times, right? So I really want to see the sims between the two of them for single target. I do think Avenging Wrath will win out on AoE, but I do want to see the sims for single target. But we're going to select Avenging Wrath here. It's definitely more consistent damage. We're going to skip over Blessed Champion because that's AoE. Like I mentioned, we're not going to grab either of these, Empyrean Legacy, Empyrean Power, or Judge, Jury, Executioner. We're going to skip over those. Those are possible talents. Again, I mentioned a couple that you could play with if you wanted to. So that's an option of somewhere you could put one that you're playing with. Abjuration, this is a very good talent. This increases our critical strike damage. It's the main part of it by 5%. So all crits are good. Obviously, then Avenging Wrath gives you crit. Kind of work well together there as well. Aegis of Protection, you have to take that to defensive. Here, this is Penitence. This is another optional talent that you could take with this build. Your damage over time effects, which in this case would be Expurg and Consecrated Blade, would be the ones ticking there for you. And then on the next row, we're going to take Blades of Light. This turns things into Holy Strike damage, which then works with Arbiter next. And then we're going to take Execution Sentence. That's a single target. This is a AoE single target node essentially now. Then we're going to take Wake of Ashes for the damage, plus the 3 holy power. Again, I guess this is the other one that doesn't necessarily do 2. So you have Hammer Wrath that does 1 holy power. This does 3. I guess Divine Toll only does 1 as well. So there are a few exceptions to that rule, I guess. Divine Arbiter is just your single target capstone talent here. So you're going to grab that. Executioner's Will is an optional talent. You don't have to take that here. It is quite good. But again, it's like, I want to see the sims of it basically versus everything else. But I think based on some of the other talents that we have to choose from, it's probably a good choice. Divine Auxiliary is actually quite a good talent, but it's not that great with Vanguard of Justice. It turns out when you generate 3 holy power for free, it's really nice when your spender costs 3, but when your spender costs 4, it's not nearly as valuable as a button to press. So, it's not terrible. This is another good talent, but you do not have to take that. Again, it's something you can play with, though. You could play with Divine Auxiliary and generate the 3 holy power, and that'd be a good one to play with. Here we have True Sway, or let's not skip over Seething Flames. This causes your Wake of Ashes to be more of a single target ability and lash out multiple times. True Wake, this is another optional talent, something that we take on live sometimes. just because, you know, it's a situation where there's like 1 talent point extra, and so that's the other optional talent there. So you have a few optional things that you can go with here. Truce Wake's a popular one. Divine Auxiliary I'd love to play with more. You could put another charge into High Lord's Judgment. Penitence is a decent option. You know, I don't think that Zealot's Fervor will have the potency necessarily, but this is passive damage as well. So you have some options here for your last one, you know, depending on what you want to put it in. I'll throw mine in Penitence for now just to save changes here. But you can kind of play with some of these a little bit. The ones I didn't mention that you could play with, those are probably going to be mandatory unless, you know, some tuning things happen before Tuesday. So I'm going to go ahead and apply these. I'll show you a little bit on the target dummy how this works. Not that I'm a master by any means of this. I'm not, you know, I'm going to be new to this just like everybody else. So oops, I did not mean to hit that. So we'll come over to the target dummy and we will, so we're going to generate Holy Power here. So I read a prio list. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but the prio for single target, as far as what I read, was Hammer of Wrath, your second charge of Templar Strike, but you have to, so Templar Slash, but you do have to press the first one to get to the slash. So I'm not sure that this, I'm just gonna say I'm not sure about this priority or whatever. I think kind of using your Templar Strikes, Templar Slash is very important. Obviously, just spending your Holy Power effectively is important as well. You do want to have Judge debuffs on your thing that you're hitting as well. But I'll be interested to see, and the only way we're going to find this out for sure is through simulations, is what the priority of the abilities are, right? So for this, I'm probably just going to be generally hitting buttons and just trying to use my Holy Power effectively. So something you might want to do is you just want to go ahead and build up the 4, which is just 2 abilities. You can Wings into your execution sentence there. I overcapped there, which is really bad. And then we're gonna use Toll just to use Toll, and we're gonna really prioritize using our Templar Strikes here. Maybe throw a Judgment in. So even though these are 4 cost, it's not too bad here. You do want to use your Hammer of Wrath a little bit at least, because you do get the Holy Hammers from it. We're gonna spend there. We're gonna go into another execution sentence. And just in general, you know, this is just, it's very free-flowing. It's not very hard. It's not difficult. The difficulty will be once we have a move priority to use, you know, making sure that you use the correct abilities in the correct order. That'll be the only difficulty. But, you know, when you have nothing else up, you can just kind of spam your Templar Strikes. That part of it is definitely nice. We'll go to 1 more 1-minute wings here. Getting into an execution sentence. One thing that's kind of rough is sometimes you have in your head still that you want to do like a 1 Crusader Strike, and you have to remember that you don't want to do that. You do want to use your second one. You do have enough time to use another ability in between the 2 things, so you could do it like a spender right afterwards. That's not a big deal. In fact, many times that's probably the play. But you do have to kind of just remember that. That's probably one of the hardest things for me, is just to remember that, you know, our priorities are going to be different, and our ability flatly just does a different thing than what it does on live. So anyways, it's not an impressive number there of DPS, but generally speaking, I was doing, you know, closer. So on this actual DPS meter, I'm at like 60k or something. That's not particularly impressive by any means on the PTR here. I was doing more sustained closer to 70k with this build earlier, but that's just, again, pressing your buttons better, things like that. I was trying to talk while I did it. Wasn't that effective at it. But yeah, that's just kind of how it works. Two Holy Powers for everything except for Divine Toll, Wake of Ashes, and then of course your Hammer of Wrath. And you just kind of want to spend. If Hammer of Wrath is a priority, you do want to use your Hammer of Wrath as much as you possibly can. We'll see, again, how that works out when we, you know, get to the simulations. So let's go ahead and check out a multi-target build here. So I am going to change one thing. I'm going to change this to Quickened Invocation, because it's just a theory, of course. This is all theory crafting. I want to check that out. We're also going to, because I don't know where the best place to do multi-target. I know there is a good multi-target place in Veldraken, so we'll head to here. So for multi-target, we are going to be using Vanguard of Justice once again, the 4 holy power spender thing. This increased my damage by about like 12. So using it on single target increased my damage by like 10% ish. Using it on multi-target increased it like 12 or 13% ish. So it's, you know, it's definitely a powerful thing. In multi-target is where, in my opinion, the Templar Strikes really shows how strong it is. It's really quite strong here. You know, you're going to see, let's look at the single target before we stop it. You still see, I was prioritizing Templar Slash probably a little bit too much, or Templar Strike a little too much in that little test I just did there. I wasn't really doing, my Hammer of Wrath or judging things very much, which is not necessarily a good thing. So you see it be quite high on the damage here, but you will also see it be quite high here on these target dummies here for AoE. Again, it's the same thing. We're going to use, let's go over the talents first. Let's get out of here. These guys are going crazy. Let's go over the talents first before we do any kind of demonstrate here. So basically the same things. I'm going to take out a point in Vengeful Wrath, and I'm going to move that to Divine Purpose. Divine Purpose is a very good AoE talent. Vengeful Wrath is only single target. Hammer of Wrath is nice to critically strike, but it is only a single target talent. Auto attacks. Now, you could argue that we could get rid of this as well. So, but there's no other really good DPS places to put it, essentially. But you could put these 2 points into something else. Touch of Light's terrible. Maybe Incandescence. 1 point in Incandescence or something like that. That would have to be simulated. But you effectively run out of good options here to put talent points in. Because auto attacks dealing a little bit of holy damage doesn't really do much for you for multi-target, but you know, it is what it is. You can't take Vengeful Wrath without getting it anyways, so that's just where we have to take the point out of if we want to take Divine Purpose. And you know, for my purposes, I do want to take Divine Purpose. We're gonna switch. I'm gonna switch to Quicken Invocation here because I do not necessarily need the Judgment to keep applying to my main target. What I really need for pure AoE is more Divine Tolls, and obviously I want to put Divine Toll into my wings as much as I can, but I'm not gonna in this case I'm not really gonna worry about it. I'm just gonna send it each time because I'm not pressing Judgment very much the way this build plays. So I'm not putting Judgment debuffs on my targets at all. I'm kind of just, I'm gonna let, you know, Divine Toll do that every once in a while. Not that I never press Judgment, it's just that it's not necessarily as needed. Here on the Ret side, and that might not even be the play, right? That's just my theory crafted thing, because I know this is single target base. This is more Divine Toll, so is more Divine Tolls better than, you know, Divine Toll into Final Reckoning, right? And that's kind of what you are surmising, right? So if Divine Toll is always better than Final Reckoning, then you just keep Divine Resonance and you don't worry about the cooldown reduction. And if it's not, then you go with that. So that's basically the choice that you're making there. Everything else is the same. Ret side, same thing here. Reduces cooldown of Blade of Justice by 2 seconds. X-Purg still. This does cleave onto other things. Holy Blade. We have to take a single target ability here. We just grab Final Verdict. Again, nothing special. Art of War here. We can skip Jurisdiction. It's not single target because we're not doing single target. Tempest of the Lightbringer, AoE talent. Shield because we have to. Sanctify, and because it's good. Sanctify for AoE. Don't need to worry about auto attack speed. Don't need to worry about our consecration being larger. We're going to do the 2 holy power on Judgment because we're using Vanguard. We're going to go with Templar Strikes because it's incredibly powerful. We're going to go with Consecrated Blade again. We're going to go with Blade of Vengeance, which changes your Blade of Justice to now be a cleave ability. It only cleaves. It does not hit your main target for normal damage, and then other targets, it just cleaves everything. Vanguard of Justice, obviously. Heart of the Crusader. It's going to increase your Templar Strikes, which is also going to be a cleave ability. We have 1 point in Judgment again. Avenging Wrath. 2 points in Blessed Champion, which causes our Crusader Strike and Judgment to cleave. We're going to grab Empyrean Power because we're going to be spamming Templar Strikes and spamming Empyrean Power. We have Abjuration. Critical strike damage is the biggest thing there. And And then we have Aegis, of course. We go down the fire side here with Penitence, Burning Crusade, and Searing Light. All very good AoE things. We're going to grab Truce Wake and Wake of Ashes, of course. And then we're going to grab Final Reckoning as well. So this is a, potential and, a pretty solid AoE build. And so I'll kind of show you. So what's very interesting about this, so I mentioned in my testings earlier that I was using a move priority that somebody put out. Now there's no guarantee, again, the simulations aren't out yet, so there's no saying that move priority is correct. But I was using the priority correctly, and I was doing, it was like 180k DPS over a long period of time. I like to test over long periods of time instead of like, oh, this is my opener or whatever. I like to do it over long periods of time to kind of simulate things out better, RNG better. Of course, this is just one person testing. I can't. If I could, I'd do that 1,000 times, long periods of time, but obviously that's not possible. So I did it with following the move priority as good as I could, as well as I could. And then I did it a different way of just spamming Templar strikes as much as I possibly could. And my damage actually went up. And that's why I think this ability might get nerfed. I prioritized Templar strikes over Wake of Ashes, Divine Toll, Expurg, and Judgment. Only thing I prioritized over Templar strikes, and then Templar Slash, of course, was casting my Avenging Wrath and my Final Reckoning, right? Those are the only things that I prioritized over pressing my Templar Strike button. And again, my damage actually went up doing that, which is kind of crazy. And, it could have just been a weird RNG thing. It was close to, like, trying to follow a priority. And the priority could just be wrong, too, right? Maybe with the proper priority, it's a little bit better than spamming your Templar Strikes. Or maybe Templar Strike spamming is just your priority. So, once again here, we're going to get started. We will just start with the Judgment there. And then once we get the opener going, now we're just going to kind of use a lot of Templar Strikes. Each of these cleave, and each of them can trigger Empyrean Power. Empyrean Power can trigger Divine Purpose. This is very strong. So you can see there, it did not get very many procs. If you don't get many procs, it becomes a lot less good. It's still a good thing. It becomes hard because you kind of have to choose whether you want Judgment debuff or you want Expurg based on this. And again, I'm doing this without having any kind of move priority, so I'm just kind of like, hey, I'm just going to have fun spamming this button that might get nerfed. And that's kind of like my thought process on it here. Again, proc these Templar Strikes also proc Empyrean Power, which can then also proc your Divine Purpose, and you can have like a cascading runaway of power, which is good. We'll finish it out after the swings here. Take a look. And this, again, no move priority whatsoever. Just kind of spamming Templar Strikes as much as I can. Alright, Wings is over. We'll throw in one more Divine Storm for good measure. We'll take a look. 180k is about what I was at before, maybe 182k. Obviously, that's sustained over a long time, and getting procs for a lot of that. So what you'll see here, so my Wake of Ashes must not have crit very much. Well, it says it did, but that was higher before on my list. But here we go. So we have Divine Storm doing 31% of my damage, and Templar Slash doing 17% of my damage. Very high amount of damage from a supposed single target ability. Templar Strike doing a bunch of damage as well. And then you have to go all the way down here to Final Reckoning, to get to Final Reckoning, all the way down here to get to Judgment. It's a lot of damage from basically just spamming one ability. Now, once again, could this be even stronger if we follow the correct move priority and we have the correct move priority? Yes, that is true. But the fact that you can just spam this button and do at least similar damage, because I was trying to follow a move priority before, and it might have been the wrong move priority, but I was, following maybe a logical move priority of like Hammer of Wrath, Blade of Wrath, Judgment, and then of course the second of your Templar Strikes being a higher priority than the first, but you have to press the first to get to the second. I think that's important to always mention there. So I just think it's quite strong. I think it might be too strong, Templar Strikes in general. But we'll see. We'll see Tuesday. Based on my luck, this probably will just be nerfed tomorrow. Well, at least then I'll look like a prophet or something if that happens. I'm sorry if you love the ability and it gets nerfed, because nerfing this ability also nerfs Vanguard of Justice. If it's less good, Vanguard of Justice becomes less good because it does not work very well with Crusading Strikes. Vanguard of Justice doesn't. So it's kind of like it's kind of like a double nerf really if they do nerf it. So I'm not necessarily, that's why I say I'm not calling for a nerf for it. By any means, I'm not calling for a nerf for it. I also just realized I didn't even take advantage of the fact that I lowered the cooldown of my Divine Toll at all. So that was completely pointless to do for that little attempt there. So basically, you know, the AoE very, very strong, much stronger than what it is on live right now. Single target, pretty strong, still, you know, a good amount stronger than what it is on live right now. A lot of the power is baked into this one ability. That just worries me. It worries me because I don't want that one ability then to get nerfed and destroyed and then kind of ruin everything. But I think it might happen. I think this ability might get nerfed. That nerfs Vanguard of Justice. And then we're kind of power-wise kind of set back a little bit. Of course, everything can be tuned. You could tune Divine Storm to do more damage. You could tune Searing Light to do more damage. And it wouldn't matter, right? At the end of the day, our ranking is going to be where Blizzard wants it to be. They're going to tune us in that way. If they want us to be really strong, they're going to keep this, especially in AoE, they're going to keep this exactly how it is. And they're going to let us go into 10.0.7 very strong, at the very least in AoE, and very competitive in single target, even if not the best or anything like that. So that's where I'm at on this. These are two potential builds that you can go into with 10.0.7. At least hopefully you have an idea of how they work. If something does change, you know that, okay, this ability sucks now. Obviously, if something big changes, like completely changes this playstyle, I will do a video to update that. And I will do a guide once simulations are out and ready. I'm not going to put out a guide that's wrong. There's plenty of people that put out stuff that's wrong. You can go get that stuff from them. But I will wait until simulations are out before I put out anything that I would call a guide. These are templates. These are theory crafting. That's all that these builds are. I will show the single target build one more time if you're still here with me. That was the AoE style build. We'll go to the single target build. Like I said, one more time here, just so if you want to take a look at it here. I would post these loadouts in the comment section below, or in the details below. However, for whatever reason, I am trying to post these, and it's telling everybody that it's out of date or something. So I'm not sure what that issue is. But if you can take a look here, obviously I went through them. You can rewind the video, and yeah, there's an option there for you for sure. So that's it for this one, guys. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel. Let's hope that we enter in 5 days from me recording this video. Let's hope that we are much stronger. We're obviously going to be much more defensive minded than what we currently are. And let's hope our damage gets a little buff as well. So as always, I do ask you to please subscribe, and everybody have a good one.